He thought he understood suffering, until that night changed everything. This is the part of history they tried to bury. Follow Hidden Tales so these stories never disappear again. Before the world remembered his name, there was only silence. Silence, and a field of dust where hope went to die slowly. He had been born into chains, not by crime, not by choice, but by a world that believed his breath belonged to another man. His name, before they tried to beat it out of him, was Kofi. A name given to him by a mother whose voice he could still hear when the nights grew too cold to survive. A name whispered in the dark, tucked behind the pain he carried like a second skin. The plantation where he lived was a cage disguised as open land. Acres of cotton, rows of sugar cane, the endless whip of the sun. All of it watched him, all of it swallowed him. On that land, a man could grow old at 20 and die forgotten before 30. And Kofi? He had seen enough men with broken backs, twisted hands, and hollow eyes to understand what waited for him if he simply followed the same path. But inside him, something lived. Something he could not kill, no matter how hard the world tried. A spark. A flicker. A memory of freedom he had never tasted but somehow still believed in. The overseers hated that spark. They could sense it. They could smell defiance the way wolves smell blood. They watched him more closely than the others, not because he was strong but because he was quiet. Quiet men think. Quiet men plan. Quiet men escape. The master, a cold man named Barrow, believed obedience was born from violence. He believed fear was stronger than hunger, stronger than pain, stronger than dignity. And so Kofi endured whip lashings that carved stories into his skin, stories of cruelty, of warning, of ownership. But inside, the spark refused to die. And every night, when the others slept exhausted, Kofi lay awake, staring at the splintered beams overhead, listening to the wind carry distant sounds of animals that were freer than any man on that land. Freedom. The word terrified him as much as it sustained him. And then, a thought came. A thought so dangerous he nearly choked on it. Perhaps the only way to escape was to become someone no one would chain. Someone useless. Someone unpredictable. Someone the master would never fear, because they feared madness even more than rebellion. The seed was planted. And once planted, it grew. Slowly. Quietly. Wildly. The days that followed were heavy with watching eyes. Kofi felt them on his back, on his neck, in every breath he took. The overseers watched for signs of rebellion, but never signs of what he was hiding, the beginnings of a persona that would save him. He began small. A stagger here. A whisper there. A strange laugh when no one expected it. The other enslaved people noticed first. Not with judgment, but with terror. They knew what happened to anyone who behaved wrong. They had seen men dragged away for less than a misplaced stare. Some stopped speaking to him altogether, afraid proximity would bring punishment. But Kofi stayed the course. His movements shifted, slow, uncertain, slightly crooked as if he could not fully trust his own limbs. His eyes became unfocused at times, then too focused at others. He would hum while working, an eerie tune with no pattern, no comfort, no meaning. At night, he spoke to the darkness. Not real conversations, fragments. Broken thoughts. Words that pressed against each other without forming sense. The first time an overseer saw him laughing alone at nothing, the man recoiled, not in anger but in fear. Fear was good. Fear meant distance. Distance meant safety. And madness was the only illness they had no cure for. But the deeper he sank into the role, the narrower the path became. For madness was a dangerous play. One misstep could mean death. If they believed he was uncontrollable, they would kill him. If they believed he was faking, they would torture him. Every gesture had to be precise. Every tremble genuine looking. Every misstep deliberate without seeming deliberate. It was a razor's edge between survival and destruction. As the days dragged on, the plantation changed around him. Work slowed whenever he came close. Conversations died when he approached. People stared, some with pity, others with horror, a few with envy. Because in a twisted way, the mad were freer than the sane. Not free to leave, but free from expectation, free from responsibility, free from the harshest tasks. One evening, as the sun sank low and the cicadas screamed in the trees, Kofi made his first bold move. He walked into the middle of the yard, stopped abruptly, and stared at the sky. Not with wonder, not with peace, but with a trembling lip and widening eyes, as if he saw something terrible descending. No words, just breath, just fear, just stillness. And dozens of others watched him, watched the way his hands twitched, watched the way his chest rose too quickly, watched the way he seemed almost transfixed by a nightmare only he could see. Someone whispered, "He done lost his mind." Another spat, he cursed. But the overseer on duty stepped back, hand tightening on his whip, as if the disease of madness might leap onto him. This was good. This was very good. Yet the danger grew with each passing day. Masters do not like unpredictability, and madness was the most unpredictable thing of all. And so, as night flowed over the land, Kofi sat alone, far from the others, rocking slowly, whispering to the trees. Not because he wanted to, but because he had to. Because the only thing more terrifying than losing his mind was keeping it. And the only path that led away from this land was the one paved with madness. In the days that followed, the air around him thickened into something almost physical, something he could feel pressing against his skin, sinking into his lungs, whispering warnings he did not yet fully understand. The plantation had always been a place of harsh labor and harsher silence, but now, something had shifted. Something invisible. Something dangerous. He felt it first in the way the overseers watched him, not with the casual cruelty they were known for, but with the cautious curiosity men reserve for things they do not trust. Their eyes clung to him longer than before, studying the slow sway of his steps, the vacant drift of his gaze, the strange murmurs he let slip under his breath. Every movement he made, every breath he drew now had an audience. But he kept his expression hollow, his stare unfocused, his mind appearing as tattered as his clothes. Each morning he let his hands tremble. Each afternoon he let his words scatter into nonsense. Each night he sat alone, rocking gently, humming tuneless sounds that frayed the nerves of even the hardest overseer. And yet, underneath the carefully crafted madness, his mind worked like a blade, sharp, patient, hidden. He listened more than he spoke, absorbing fragments of conversations that floated through the air like drifting ash. The master's debts, the overseer's rivalries, the tensions between the field hands, the sickness rumored to be spreading in a neighboring plantation. Every detail mattered. Every whisper carved a new path in his mind, tightening the invisible plan he'd locked behind the mask he wore. Because pretending to be mad was only step one. Survival required something far more dangerous. He never forgot the day the idea was born. It had been during one of the rare moments he managed to slip into silence without being noticed. He'd stood behind the old smokehouse, staring at the cracked boards and weathered beams, when he overheard the master himself speaking in a low, frustrated tone. "Mad slaves are no use," the master muttered. "Barely worth feeding. We should send him off before he becomes a burden." That sentence became his lifeline. But he knew that convincing them he was mad was not enough. Madness created questions. Questions created delays. Delays created danger. If he wanted to escape the fate he'd been born into, his madness had to become not just believable but unbearable. So he pushed deeper. He began speaking to shadows, leaning close to empty spaces as though listening to voices only he could hear. He startled easily, flinching at sudden sounds, recoiling from touches, mumbling in a broken rhythm that made his sentences fray into nothingness. The other enslaved people avoided him now, out of fear more than judgment. Some believed spirits had taken him. Others believed punishment had shattered his mind. Many simply didn't want to be associated with someone who might bring trouble down on all of them. But in the dark, when no one could see him, he allowed the mask to slip. For a few breaths each night, he stood straight, steady, cold, thinking. He traced the map in his mind, the guard rotations, the weak points in the fence line, the blind corners, the places where shadows gathered thickest. He remembered which overseers drank the most at night, which ones left their keys near the door, which ones snored loud enough to cover footsteps. The world did not know the brilliance he carried, and that was his greatest weapon. One night, while sitting by the dying embers behind the quarters, he sensed someone approaching. Slow footsteps. Measured. Careful. He did not look up at first. Instead, he continued to rock, murmuring incoherent sounds that rose and fell like wind through broken windows. The footsteps stopped inches from him. He lifted his eyes just enough to see a figure, one of the elders from the quarters. A woman who'd lived long enough to bury daughters and grandchildren. A woman whose silence commanded more respect than the overseer's whip. She stared at him with a mix of pity and suspicion. "You," she said softly, "are not as gone as you pretend." His breath caught. For a heartbeat too long, the rocking stopped. The woman noticed. She knelt slowly, her brittle bones cracking softly as she lowered herself to his level. "You listen too closely to be mad," she whispered. "You move with too much purpose." He opened his mouth slightly, letting a fragile whimper escape, a sound that could be mistaken for fear or delirium. But she didn't flinch. "Whatever it is you're trying to do," she said, "be careful." Madness draws attention, but so does pretending. Her eyes bore into him with unsettling clarity, as if she could see through the fractured surface of his act straight into the sharp mind beneath. He forced a trembling smile, a crooked gesture that could pass for something broken. Yet the woman simply nodded, understanding more than she revealed. When she stood, she left him with a single sentence that stayed with him long after her silhouette faded into the dark. If you fail, they will not punish you like a man. They will end you like an animal. Her words carved something heavy into his ribs. Fear, yes, but also a renewed sense of urgency. Pretending to be mad was never meant to be a permanent disguise. It was a bridge, a door, a weapon. But now he understood something else. It was also a risk that could destroy him long before it saved him. The next morning, the tension grew worse. The master sent for him. He was dragged into the main yard by two overseers, their grips tight on his arms, their disgust palpable. The master stood near the porch, his shadow stretching long across the dusty ground. He looked him up and down with the cold calculation of a man assessing livestock. "This one's broken," the master said flatly. "Completely ruined." One of the overseers nodded. "He wanders at night, talks to no one, mumbles nonsense. Useless in the fields now." The master rubbed his chin, thinking. He felt his heart pound beneath the fragile mask he wore. This was it. The moment his entire fate dangled between survival or ruin. The master leaned closer, examining his eyes, searching for some hint of awareness. He let his gaze spin unfocused, letting his mouth fall slightly open, a droplet of spit forming at the corner of his lips. A slow sway of the body, a flicker of tremor in the hands. Enough to unsettle. Enough to convince. The master recoiled slightly. "Disgusting," he muttered. "We can't have him infecting the others. Send him away. Somewhere far. A place where he can't cause trouble." His stomach tightened. Somewhere far. He didn't know what that meant. Work camp, trading post, experimental farm, or worse. But one thing was clear. Wherever they were planning to send him, he would not survive it. The overseers tightened their grip, preparing to drag him toward the holding shed where unwanted enslaved people were kept until transport. His plan was beginning to work, but it was also starting to kill him. The world around him blurred as he stumbled forward, dragged by arms that felt like iron hooks. The yard stretched endlessly, each grain of dust illuminated by the burning sun. His breath grew shallow. His trembling became real. Because now his plan was no longer a performance. Now it was a race against time, against the master, against the cage waiting for him at dawn, against death. And the mask of madness that once protected him was becoming the very thing that threatened to destroy him. But beneath all the terror, one thought pulsed louder than the fear. He would not let them decide his fate. Not now. Not ever. Even if he had to let the world believe he was broken, he would find a way to break free. Because the real madness was not in his mind. It was in the world that enslaved him. And he intended to use that madness against them. The world around him began to tilt. It happened slowly at first, the kind of slow that almost felt like nothing was changing at all. But madness, even the kind you pretend, has a way of reshaping the edges of a man's life. And for him, every corner of the plantation now felt sharper, hungrier, more watchful than before. The whispers were no longer whispers. The glances no longer glances. The nights no longer nights. They were traps with their jaws already half closed. Word had spread. Not about the plan. Not about the truth he carried like a burning coal inside his ribs. But about the madness. Some said he talked to spirits. Some swore they'd seen him arguing with trees. Others believed he had forgotten how to walk straight. And yet, beneath the mask, beneath the trembling hands and the vacant stare, his mind had never moved faster. Because the closer he got to the edge of freedom, the more dangerous every breath became. The overseers began circling him differently now, not with the cruelty reserved for the sane, but with the hesitation reserved for the unpredictable. They avoided his eyes. They muttered to themselves. They watched him the way men watch a fire they're not sure they can put out. But the master watched him in a different way. With curiosity, with suspicion, with something like a hunter's patience. The master did not fear madness, he feared deception. And so each day, the man who pretended to be broken felt the weight of that gaze pressing harder against the back of his neck. It was not the blows that threatened to shatter him now. It was the stillness, the waiting. The knowledge that at any moment the master might decide to test him, to poke holes in the fragile mask he had built, to drive a wedge between the lie and the truth. And if even one crack appeared, one slip, one glance, one breath wrong, everything would collapse. So he leaned further into it. He stumbled when he walked. He mumbled when he spoke. He laughed at the wrong moments. He shrieked at shadows. But pretending to lose your mind is not easy when everyone around you has already lost theirs to fear. The other enslaved people began to pull away from him. Not because they didn't understand, but because they understood too well. Madness was contagious in a place already infected with suffering. And they knew that even standing too close to a man the master suspected could bring punishment. So he found himself alone. Alone at the well. Alone in the fields. Alone in the dark where the wind moved like hands through the trees. It was in that loneliness that the truth began to gnaw at him. A truth he had pushed aside. A truth he had tried not to name. The truth that madness, real madness, was not just a performance. It was a shadow. And the longer you walked with a shadow, the more it began to look like you. Sometimes he caught himself forgetting the lines he had practiced. Sometimes he heard whispers that weren't there. Sometimes he laughed and didn't remember deciding to. And each time he wondered, was the act consuming him? Or was he simply becoming the thing he pretended to be? But he had no choice now. He had gone too far to turn back. Freedom was not a door he could simply walk through. It was a door with 1,000 locks, and pretending to be broken was the only key he had. So he forced himself to keep going. But fate, as always, was listening. And fate does not let a man walk toward freedom without placing a price in front of him. One night, a night without moon, a night stitched together by silence, he heard the master speaking with the chief overseer. Their voices drifted through the cracks of the quarters like smoke, thin and dangerous. "He's faking it," the master said. "No man loses his mind that slowly." The overseer huffed. "Then let me beat the truth out of him." "No," the master replied. "Beating shows fear. Madness must be studied, not beaten." "Studied?" The words slid into the man's bones like ice. The master continued, "Tomorrow I test him. If he breaks character for even one moment, kill him." The room spun. His lie had carried him this far. But now the lies of others were beginning to move against him. He spent the whole night shaking, not because he was afraid to die. He had made peace with death long ago. But because he was afraid to die with the truth still trapped inside him, unheard, unseen, buried the way so many stories before him had been buried. When dawn arrived, it arrived cold. The master called for him. Not with a shout, not with anger, but with a softness that terrified him more than any whip. "Come," the master said. The yard felt smaller that morning. The sky felt lower. Even the wind refused to move. The master circled him once, twice, slowly, like a man inspecting a piece of glass for cracks. Then he spoke. "Show me your mind," the master whispered. The test had begun. And he knew, with the full weight of his heart, that one wrong breath, one wrong blink, one wrong heartbeat, would end everything. The path to freedom was no longer ahead of him. It was under his feet, and it was breaking. And as he looked into the master's eyes, he felt the world tilt again, sharper this time, closer to the edge. The truth he had been running from was not behind him anymore. It was standing directly in front of him, waiting, breathing, ready to strike. And though he tried to hold his mask steady, he felt something inside himself crack. Not enough to break him, but enough to remind him. The real madness was about to begin. And then, when hope was thin as a thread, the truth cracked open. For weeks he had played the part so perfectly that even the overseers whispered about him. They said madness had eaten him. They said his mind had snapped like a dry twig. They said he was no longer a man, just a trembling shadow of one. They had no idea he heard every word. No idea he counted every step. No idea he watched, memorized, calculated. His shaking hands, his blank staring eyes, his muttering at the sky, none of it was real. Not the limp, not the trembling, not the hollow moans in the night. Every twitch was a weapon. Every stumble was a shield. Every fit was a doorway to the only freedom he could reach. The freedom of never being noticed long enough to be feared. And that night, the night the master finally ordered him moved to the sick quarters. The night they loosened the chains because the mad one won't fight. The night they turned their backs because he can't even stand straight anymore. That was the night he rose. Slowly, quietly, deliberately. The madness slipped off him like an old rag. His spine straightened. His eyes sharpened. The trembling stopped. For the first time in months he inhaled as himself. He had mapped the building with the eyes of a ghost. The weak hinges, the blind corners. The overseer who always drank from dusk till midnight. The guard who slept with his boots on. The door no one bothered to lock because the mad one ain't going nowhere. Every detail was a key. Every key led to one door. And behind that door, the truth waited. He moved like a shadow, tasting the world for the first time. Outside, the moon carved silver knives out of the metal scraps, and the wind carried the breath of danger. Two guards laughed on the far side of the yard, their backs turned, their rifles leaning against the wall behind them. Perfect. He stepped over hay, over broken boards, over a rusted chain that once held him. Every sound mattered. Every heartbeat had weight. Then came the moment he had planned for, the moment he dreamed of while pretending to speak to empty skies. The overseer at the main door, drunk, half asleep, muttering to himself. He approached with the same broken, zigzagging gait he had faked for months. The overseer didn't even look up. "Back to your corner, crazy man," he grumbled. But the crazy man didn't turn. He kept coming. Closer, closer, close enough to feel the heat of the overseer's breath. The man looked up, confused, annoyed, and then suddenly afraid. Because the eyes staring back at him were not empty anymore. They were awake. They were alive. They were dangerous. What was all he managed before a hand wrapped around his throat? A hand steadier than stone. A grip that had practiced itself in silence. The struggle was short, quiet, efficient. When the overseer fell, the world didn't even notice. He took the keys. He moved inside. He walked the corridor he had memorized in fragments and broken reflections. And then, he reached the master's door. The man who stole his life with pen and chains. The man who called him half-wit, beast, broken thing. The man who believed madness made him harmless. His hand hovered on the doorknob. Every breath felt like fire. Every memory screamed inside him. He wasn't trembling from fear anymore. He was trembling from something far more powerful. A freedom he could finally touch. He pushed the door open. The master was alone, asleep, breathing the quiet breath of a man who believed he owned the night. But tonight didn't belong to him. Tonight belonged to the slave he thought was broken. Tonight belonged to the act that had been planned with the patience of suffering itself. Tonight belonged to truth, and the truth stepped forward, slowly, without madness, without fear, without chains. The door closed behind him with the softest click, so soft that even the moon did not hear it. What happened next was the moment history tried to bury. The moment everything changed. The moment madness became freedom. Long after the screaming had quieted and the dust settled over the broken yard, the memory of that night refused to die. The plantation, once a place of commands, chains, and silent obedience, now stood like a wounded animal, breathing shallow, trembling under the weight of what it had witnessed. The walls remembered, the land remembered, and the story of the slave who pretended he was mad had already begun its slow march into something much larger than rumor. There were those who swore they had seen him wander into the treeline at dawn, muttering to himself, stumbling as if still lost in the same madness he had used as armor. Others insisted that the madness faded the moment he crossed the boundary of the plantation, vanishing like smoke, revealing a man who had never been broken in the first place. A man whose mind had always been sharper, more deliberate, more dangerous than any whip-wielding overseer could imagine. But the truth of where he went mattered less than why he had survived. For years he had listened to screams swallowed by night. He had watched families torn apart while masters slept with full stomachs. He had worked their fields under burning suns and freezing dawns. He had bent his back but never his will. Madness, real or not, became the last language left to him. A language his captors were too arrogant to decipher. A cloak they were too blind to see through. A doorway they never imagined he would walk through. And so, in the aftermath, the plantation trembled. Not because a man had escaped, slaves escaped often, but because they had been outwitted by someone they thought beneath thought itself. Stories began to spread, carried first by whispers among the enslaved, then further, traveling in the pockets of traders in secret letters, encoded hymns sung at night. They spoke of a man who turned madness into strategy. A man who let them believe he had lost his mind so he could keep his life. A man who used the only weapon they could never take from him, his ability to understand them better than they understood him. For many enslaved people, his story became a quiet rebellion of the heart. Proof that even in the darkest corners, intellect could survive. Hope could survive. Defiance could survive. They repeated his tale in fragmented verses, in careful glances, in the way they held themselves when a master walked past. And far beyond the plantation, his legend grew teeth. Some said he joined a hidden settlement of escaped slaves deep in the swamps, where no white man dared to go. Others believed he crossed state lines under the cover of night, guided by those who risked their own lives to help the lost find freedom. A few swore they heard he joined uprisings, teaching others how to feign weakness, how to confuse overseers, how to move unseen by pretending to be in plain sight. But the one part of his story no one ever argued about was simple. He had won, not with fists, not with blood, not with fire, but with the quiet brilliance of a man who refused to break, even when the world demanded it of him. Years later, when the plantation changed owners, when new overseers tried to scrub away the memory of what once happened, the land still hummed with the story. It refused burial. It refused erasure. Those who worked the field said the air changed when his name was spoken, growing heavier, fuller, as if the world itself honored the weight of what he had done. He became a symbol, a warning, a promise. And even now, generations later, his story still lives, carried in the shadows of history, hidden in the corners of truth that textbooks never bother to illuminate. Because some stories are too dangerous to forget, too powerful to silence, too human to erase. And today, his truth breathes again. If you want more untold stories history tried to erase, follow Hidden Tales.